After 20 years working in the wine industry and traveling to over 50 countries, I can tell you that the best wine trips are usually not about visiting the famous wineries. They're about planning smart, talking to the right people, and leaving room for spontaneity. So if you're planning a wine focused trip this summer or really anytime, these are my 7 biggest tips for you in the exact order that I actually use them. By the way, welcome. I'm Hilary Zio, certified sommelier, two-time wine book author and restaurant owner. And I'm here to talk about travel for wine lovers only. So the first tip, use technology to choose the region. So if a wine region is on my list, it's usually because I love the wine from there and maybe because there's a beach nearby. Not always, sometimes it's like a spectacular attraction, like the castles along the Loire River in France. But before I book anything, I spend some time researching the region. And honestly, Instagram is one of the best tools for this. So let's use the example of Rias Baixas. Known for Albarino, which of course I love, I search hashtag Rias Baixas on Instagram, and you can tell immediately what the vibe is going to be. I'm like, wow, I see a lot of beaches, it's historic looking villages, more traditional over something super modern. And then I go on Airbnb and I type in Rias Baixas and I see how many properties are available. And then if I see like a cluster clearly of one specific area in a town, I'm like, oh, Cambados. That town looks popular. I wonder why. So I Google image Cambados. Okay, wow. It's historic and stunning. It's a walkable town, and I'd really like to stay there. So next, I'll go over to Google Maps, type in restaurants in Cambados. And again, I like to see these clusters. I like to stay near a lot of restaurants because I want to just drink wine, explore wine bars, and not have to drive back to the hotel or the Airbnb after. So sometimes staying in the middle of all these restaurants can be super loud. I made that mistake in the Gothic quarter of Barcelona. So for me, walking distance to the heart of a city is really going to be best. And from here, you can find a hotel or Airbnb and book it. Next tip, choose your wineries wisely. So if I have no idea where to book a wine tasting, I usually start by searching Google for the organic or biodynamic wineries in that region first. Because to me, it's usually going to mean that they aren't giant bulk wine producers. They're probably farming more carefully, right? They're not dumping tons of chemicals into the process. And the experience is going to feel much more personal. It does not mean that it's going to be cheaper, though, right? Sometimes these wines and even the tasting fee is actually more expensive. But the tasting experience is going to be so much better. You might end up in a tiny little tasting room in a very small group or even completely alone, which has happened to me a lot. And honestly, there's nothing better than being the only people there and not fighting for the tasting attendant's attention. So, next tip, when you're booking your winery visits, remember that not all wine regions are created equal. So if you're in Burgundy, for example, you can't just rock up to any winery and ask for a tasting. Oftentimes, they're going to need several weeks' notice, depending on the season, of course. But this is the case for a lot of wineries in Champagne, Napa, Bordeaux, Burgundy. Other regions just, they don't even take reservations, they're walk in only. But usually, in a given region, it's going to be a mix of both. So, how do you even know? You go to the winery's website. Usually, there's going to be a visit us tab, some type of form that you might fill out if you want to get a tasting. And if there's not, then you just email them. If you see a winery you want to visit, maybe you've had the wine before or it just looks really beautiful and romantic, send them a message like, hey, I was hoping to book a tasting appointment on either July 12th or July 13th between 9 a.m. and noon. Do you guys have availability? Make sure you give them like a week or two to respond. Also, try not to go during harvest. So in Europe or the USA, that's going to be late August through early October. And honestly, it kind of sucks because September is such a perfect time to travel otherwise, right? There's way less people and the weather's kind of perfect. But wineries are really stressed out during harvest. They are exhausted. They probably just don't even want to see you, anyways. Next tip, group your winery visits by location. So once I have my winery list that I want to see, I organize everything geographically. So I'll have 4 days in Galicia, let's say. I will literally create a north day, a south day, an east day, and a west day, meaning that all the wineries in each quadrant are going to get visited on the same day. I actually do this with attractions too. So that worked perfectly for me when I was in Athens, Greece. But with that said, don't stack your entire day all in the same place, like from morning till midnight, because you don't want winery lunch, winery dinner. Because at some point, you're going to want to go back to the hotel, shower, sit by the pool, just relax a little bit before dinner, because wine travel should still feel like a vacation. Tip number 5, book your winery visits early in the day. I almost always try to book wineries in the mornings, like between 9 a.m. and noon tops. Not only do the wineries often prefer this, but you won't be walking around a vineyard in the extreme heat in the afternoon, and the staff usually has a lot more energy this time of day. Also, the lighting is really beautiful for taking photos, and honestly, you feel way better tasting wine earlier in the day than after when you go to lunch and you wander around town. So instead, save those afternoons for going to the beach, right? Sit by the pool, go to the spa. My ideal wine travel day is winery in the morning, a long wine filled lunch, a relaxing afternoon, and then dinner. Not drinking wine nonstop for 12 straight hours. You're not going to like that. And I'd always allow 1 hour per winery visit plus an extra 30 minutes for parking, buying bottles, paying, getting lost, bathroom breaks, and then you add the travel distance on top of that. People always underestimate how long it takes. And tip number 6, don't overbook your trip, especially if you're traveling two people, like as a couple. Don't make too many reservations before your trip if you don't absolutely have to, like you would have to in probably Champagne and or Burgundy. But because once you get there, a lot's going to change based on the recommendations you get. So usually I'll just pre-book one or two wineries that I really care about seeing. And some of the best meals and wineries I've ever experienced were completely unplanned. So while you're at the first winery you love, tell them, what kind of styles you like. Tell them what wines that you really enjoyed of theirs and say, hey, where else should we visit since we really liked this one and that one? They're often wine lovers with a lot of friends who make really great wine. So those recommendations are going to be gold. Tip number 7, find the coolest wine bar first. Once I arrive, literally, I drop off my bags, and my first stop is the coolest wine bar that I can find on Instagram during my travel day. And usually for me, I'll have a lot of mutual friends with this bar. But for you, maybe just, check out the vibe. What's the wine pictures like? The menus? What's their following like? And when you go, sit down early, at the bar and just be really nice to the bartender or the server. This has gotten me some of the best recommendations of my life, but you have to be specific, right? Don't just ask, hey, where should we eat? Instead, say, we want to go where the locals go and have the best seafood, something that's not touristy or formal, nothing white tablecloth. We love organic wine. And then take notes. I literally keep a little notes tab in my phone because after two glasses of Albarino, you're not going to remember all these restaurant names that aren't even in the language that you speak. They'll likely be giving you their unbiased opinions on wineries too. So get all their advice and don't overbook anything. So if you have gaps, you can try and fill them in. And honestly, if you don't have much time and you want to taste as much wine from the region as possible, then I highly recommend just wine bar hopping and focusing only on tasting the local wines from that region, not just the normal stuff that you like. Because talking to sommeliers at great wine bars will teach you way more than just driving all over the hillsides looking for hidden gems, right? So, especially if the wine bar is close to where you're staying, and hence that's why I love walkability when I'm booking a place to stay. And lastly, my bonus tip, you don't always need the full tour at the winery. Personally, I don't book the full winery tour anymore because I've done this a lot. I've seen my fair share of barrels and tanks and forklifts. But if you're newer to wine and they offer the tour, then you're probably going to learn a ton. Just remember, even if you're mostly there for the tasting, that's not really what they want you to do because these guys are proud. They take a lot of pride in their wines and they want to tell their story. So don't just walk in and say, oh, hey, we're just here to drink, right? Instead, I would say something like, I'd love to hear about your approach, what makes you different, really anything unique you'd like to show us. And we have about an hour because people in wine are usually very passionate about what they do. I've been to tastings sometimes that last up to 3 hours, especially in the slower beach towns that I visited. The best wine trips are usually not the most expensive or the most perfectly planned. They're the ones where you get to discover places organically and really talk to people instead of trying to complete the region. So if you like this video, tell me where you're going in the comments below. Maybe I have a recommendation for you. See you next time.